Hi guys, hello, welcome to day one of this week's Food and Body Obsession workshop. I am so excited to have you here today. I am just going to post a little comment here and make sure that everyone who joins knows what we're doing. So today is day one of Food and Body Obsession workshop. All right, I'm going to post that and let's see if I know how to pin it here. Pin comment. There we go. Oh my gosh, I did it. How do you like that? I'm technologically advanced. Okay, guys. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about my story, and I don't know if you have heard my story before or exactly what I've been through and what brought me here. It's a very interesting and long story, but I do think it's important that you know where I'm coming from and why I became so obsessed with not being obsessed with food and exercise and having other moms out there not go through the same experience that I went through. I do look back on these times that I'm about to tell you about with some regret, of course, because I missed out on a lot of things with my own kids, but I do think that it led me to do what I'm doing now, which is, helping other women enjoy motherhood so they don't have to go through the food and body obsession experience like I did too. And I know a lot of you are stuck there right now, but I want you to see my story and to figure that if it can happen for me, it can happen for you too. And it doesn't have to take 7 years or so the way that it took for me, 20 years, I don't know, from beginning to end. So my story, I am a mom of 4. If you don't know me, my oldest kids are old. My oldest just turned 21. My youngest is 5, almost 6 years old, and I've got 2 girls in between. I became a mom when I was 22 years old, and I had my first child 6 days after my 21st birthday. I was a baby. I was a college kid just trying to figure out how to take care of myself and did not quite know that yet. But I also, had to learn how to take care of him at the exact same time. So we kind of grew up together, my son and I. And I was, a college kid and eating like a college kid. I didn't know how to take care of myself and my body. And I was always, after my pregnancy with him and after my pregnancy with each of my girls following that over the next 8 years, I was always on diets and I was always yo-yoing back and forth. I would gain 20, 30, 40 pounds that I wouldn't lose after each pregnancy. And then I would try to diet it off. And it was just this ongoing nonstop yo-yo of diets, swinging door, always losing 20 to 30 pounds, getting really excited, and then feeling like I could give up. I was done and relax and go back to eating like the college kid that I thought I still was at that time. So, because of hopping on and off these diets, I developed this really intense relationship with food. And food was my only source of pleasure back then. I was so stressed out as a young mom, trying to create a career at the same time that I was trying to create a life with my children, and also just obsessed with changing my body because I didn't feel like myself anymore. And so I was always, I always had such an intense relationship with food, and it was really exhausting. On and off of diets for many, many years, and just developed really disordered eating patterns and guilt and shame around food because I associated it with, with changing my body. So I was always thinking about the food because of that. I was always thinking about my body because of this. Always thinking about what's the next thing I can do to lose this 20 pounds? How can I finally change this? And it was just always on my mind. I was also so stressed out that it was almost like a distraction. I was overwhelmed with having 3 little kids. I was overwhelmed with building my career. All of these things were piling on me all at the same time. And I just couldn't come up for air long enough to figure out why I was having this unhealthy relationship with food, what to do about my body. I think I sat down one time when my kids were all under the age of 8. I had 3 kids under the age of 8, and I sat down and was like, what is going on here? Why can I not get my life together? Why can't I exercise? Why can't I fix my body? and added up a list of all my responsibilities and came up with 27 hours a day of responsibilities before I had ever even slept. So there was no, I had all of these things that needed to be prioritized that weren't happening, and food and my body were definitely not hitting the top of the list because it felt like a chore to me. It felt like something I had to do to fix my body. But at the same time, I also really didn't like how I looked after having 3 pregnancies and having this extra weight on my body. So it was just this nonstop back and forth for me. And I have some pictures here to share with y'all in case you haven't seen them. So here's me as a young mom, just having had my 3rd child. And I remember getting this picture back and just crying my eyes out after seeing it because, forget the fact that I was breastfeeding, that I had just had this child. It was also one of the hardest times of my life. And, I had severe postpartum depression, but I spent that entire year trying to figure out how to fix that body. Here I am as a 22, 23-year-old, having just had my first child. That little guy right there just turned 21, and he is the sweetest kid in the world. But anyways, I just was always, every time I remember getting back all of these pictures and just being like, how can I fix this? How can I get back to who I know I am? How can I get back to the way that I want my body to look? And, it was just a very frustrating time, always being on some sort of diet, always trying to fix my body, and also trying to juggle having all these little kids who needed me and build this business, the business that I had before this one. I actually had a period in my life when, how do I take this picture off now? Okay. I'm going to figure this out, guys. So, I always had this period. I also had this period in my life when my youngest was about 2 years old, where I went through 2 really horrible things at the exact same time. I went through, my dad had been diagnosed with a benign brain tumor, but it was a really treacherous brain tumor on his brainstem. And I got that news 5 months after my first husband and I split. So I was going through a really horrible divorce. I had 3 little kids. I still had postpartum from the 3rd child. And I was also dealing with my dad's illness and his surgery. He had the surgery to remove the brain tumor. It went horribly, and he basically lost all motor skills and was never the same. So I was really, really miserable and so stressed out beyond anything that anybody should ever have to deal with at one time. Dealing with my marriage falling apart, dealing with my dad's illness. He was the closest person in my life, and also my support system through my divorce. And just dealing with all of these things all at one time. And finally, I was still on the yo-yo diet bandwagon, just on and off, on and off. Finally decided that I needed to just put that aside for a little bit and just take care of myself. So it started with getting into exercise and looking at what I was eating and looking at that as a form of self-care instead of something that I was doing to control my body. So what ended up happening was, as I started taking care of myself, I started to lose weight. And I wasn't even realizing that I was losing weight. It was just happening. And I was so focused on just self-care, 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 that it was just happening as this side effect. And so one day I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. I was having to buy new clothes. I was still wearing these giant clothes that were way too big for me because I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was losing weight. So finally went and bought myself new clothes, realized what had happened. And then this switch went off. I was in such a great place because I was practicing self-care, but then I saw the changes to my body, and then I got obsessed. And then I became, I wanted more. I wanted I saw that I had done all this with my body, and I wanted it to be better and better and better. So my focus went away from self-care and back to the shape of my body. And I think that partially this was a way for me to feel in control of all the things that were out of control around me. And, it just, at the time, it just was such a massive shift. And it happened around the same time that I met Tony, whom many of you know, who is my husband now. And I developed orthorexia, which is an obsession with perfect food and exercise, constant restricting. So I was, on the opposite end of the spectrum. I would restrict myself just long enough to lose some weight, and then I would start to binge, and binging was winning. So I was binging most of the time. But there was still like guilt and shame around food, and obsession with food. Now I was restricting most of the time, and my body reflected that. But then I would go on these massive binges that were happening, like every 6 weeks or so, where I would just be in control, and I'd be white knuckling my way through diets for, up to 6 weeks at a time sometimes. But then the minute I would let go, the minute I would like make a mistake or mess up or even allow myself a cheat meal, I would just completely lose control and could not stop eating. It was just nonstop binging, and it wasn't healthy. And it didn't matter that my body, so during this process, I got down to very lean, 12% body fat. That's very lean for a female. And here is a picture of me. Let's see, this is probably me at my leanest at 12% body fat. And this picture I have labeled as a before picture, because it wasn't enough. I was still trying to lose weight, even though I had like 6 packs. It just was never good enough. I would get to the goal line where I would get real excited, like, oh my God, there's my abs. But then it would wear off. It was a very shallow feeling. And it was just never enough. I was in the habit of finding my flaws, and in the habit of finding the things that still needed to improve. And it just never ended. I always needed more and more in order to be happy with my body. And I never was happy for longer than maybe a day. This is another before picture, you guys. So, what ended up happening was, I was still miserable and depressed, even with this body that I thought was going to fix it all. I had been chasing for years and years and years. I thought that getting the body was where the happiness was at. And so I was still obsessing over food, still obsessing over my body, even though I had hit it. And, it was just like, I always needed more and more. Like, it was like drugs. It was like, how with you get addicted to drugs, or you get addicted to alcohol, a little bit is never enough anymore. You need more and more and more in order to get the original high. The same thing was happening with my body. So, and I've heard about this happening with so many people. So this fear that I had when I was overweight, when I had 30 or 40 extra pounds on my body, was like, I'm not good enough like this, and I need to lose this weight. That fear went to, I'm not good enough like this. I can't ever gain this weight back, or I need to keep going. It was just always fear. And it didn't matter whether I was 30 to 40 pounds overweight or at my perfect body. I was always anxious and thinking about my body, and always anxious and thinking about food. It didn't fix it. And I think a lot of people think that once I get back to that body, that it will fix it, and then I'll be okay. But that was definitely not the case for me. So then I hit rock bottom. I managed to kind of heal a little bit, and started practicing a little bit of intuitive eating. Wasn't fully putting my all into it, but started to develop a little bit of a healthier mindset around food and my body, but not enough for sure. I was kind of just dipping my toe into it. And this happened around the same time that I became pregnant with my 4th child, Austin, who is my baby. So this was now 6 years ago. So I wanted to have the fittest pregnancy of all time. I wanted to have abs on a pregnant belly. And if you are familiar with my website, it has now been visited over 4.5 million times. My website was called Fit to Be Pregnant, and I was a fit pregnancy blogger. And my whole goal was to show women how to have a fit and healthy pregnancy. I was in a pretty good mindset about it, but I was still pretty obsessed with my body and how it was going to change. And I just thought that I was going to be able to control it this time. I was going to be able to control the weight that I gained because I knew how, and I was so much more into healthy food this time than I was with the first 3. And the whole premise of the whole thing was that I was going to I had had these 3 really unhealthy pregnancies. I had gained lots of weight with all of them, and this was going to be my healthy one. And healthy was like a term that it was like a code word for not gaining too much weight, And I think we do that a lot in this industry. So I wanted to do this, and no matter what I did, I was gaining fat. And I got into the first trimester and was so sick. And then as soon as I felt okay, all I could eat was carbs and crackers and bagels. It was the only thing that sounded good. And I remember I was standing in the mirror at 14 weeks, and I had like taken my little progress picture, and I had like seen a huge difference between a couple of weeks ago and this current week. And the fat was there, and I was just freaking out about it, you guys. Just miserable over, a little bit of fat on my body. Comparing the two pictures, and I was starting to realize, like, I don't have control over this. I was eating exactly the way that I did when I was 12% body fat. Nothing had changed with my exercise besides, a little bit of nausea and not being able to fully do what I had done before. But the fat was coming on, and I could not control it. And this was a big wake-up call for me. And I remember looking in the mirror, I was crying. And realizing I wasn't going to have the abs during pregnancy that I had wanted. And I was like, you know what? I am at a fork in the road, because I can either spend the rest of this pregnancy miserable and fighting my body, or I can trust it. And it was truly like a moment that I will never forget, because it changed the course of the rest of my life and sent me to this place that I am today, which is not obsessed with food anymore, not obsessed with my body anymore, but in a very trusting relationship with my body and with food. So hit 14 weeks, decided I am going to trust my body. And that was literally my mantra for the rest of the pregnancy. My body knows what to do, and I trust it. My body knows what to do, and I trust it. And still to this day, my body does know what to do. It doesn't matter that I'm not pregnant, and I do trust it. I gained 35 pounds in that pregnancy. I don't think that I managed to get a picture of that before I came on. I didn't. I gained 35 pounds in that pregnancy. I was huge. I was really huge. But it didn't matter, because I was so happy. And I could look at my body, and I could just kind of laugh about it and let it go, because I was just happy. I was happy that I trusted my body, that I knew what to do, and it was okay. And this carried over for the rest of my life after the pregnancy, and pushed me over the edge. Like, I had started to heal before, but didn't have a good reason. This forced me to heal, and to heal my relationship with food and my body. And I knew that I never wanted to be in a war with my body or with food again. I knew that I didn't want to think about it the way that I had before, and have it take over my life the way that it had before. And I was able, after he was born, to really relax and enjoy my baby and my kids for the first time, without being distracted, and with being distracted by self-hatred and obsession. And it was magical. I felt fully present for the first time. After 4 kids, here I was, this was going to be my first healthy pregnancy, and it turned out to be the first healthy physically, but also the first mentally healthy pregnancy as well. And the period that followed it. I just felt very like I was taking care of myself. I was taking care of my son. There was no pressure. There was no outside pressure. And naturally things fell into place. I reached my naturally healthiest weight without obsessing over food. And lost the weight of that pregnancy in a way that was really relaxed, and just, I wasn't thinking about it. It was just self-care. It was the same thing that had happened a few years earlier that I had kind of missed, because I had become obsessed with my body again. So I noticed that during the 2 phases of motherhood that I went through, there was the self neglect part, where I was binging, and kind of binging was winning. And there was the self-control part, where I was obsessed with not gaining the weight back, and with keeping this ridiculously lean physique. I noticed that there were some things that were the same. I was always out of touch with my body and what it actually needed. So it didn't matter if I was overweight or if I was forcing myself to stay lean. I was not listening to my body and what it actually needed. I was overriding it, either eating more food than I needed, and calming and numbing myself with food, or I was ignoring that I needed more food, and ignoring what my body was actually telling me about restriction and about being balanced, And I was ignoring those things in both of those situations. And I was always obsessed with food. Always. It didn't matter whether I was obsessed when I was binging and eating a lot and using it to kind of numb myself to the stresses of young motherhood, or whether I was, trying to stay massively in control and think about what am I going to eat next that's going to make this okay. What am I going to eat next to get me to that goal body? I was always berating myself in the mirror and beating myself up for mistakes, both situations. So again, it doesn't matter whether I look like this or like this. These are the exact same thing. So I was always either making rules or breaking them. So in my overindulgent days, I had these rules in my head that I was supposed to be following, but I was just always breaking them. So I felt guilt and shame around food. Or in the self-controlling aspect, when I was trying to maintain this physique, I had all these rules I had ridiculous amounts of rules that I was trying to follow, but it would end up breaking at some point down the road anyways, because nobody can live like that. I was always viewing my self-worth as a result of the way that I looked. I had all my self-worth eggs in the body basket. I was always exhausted from the war in my own head that was going on about food. I was always searching for control, trying to control myself. Where is that self-control, which I have learned is a non-existent thing, and we'll talk about that this week. I was always using food as a coping mechanism. So whether I was restricting myself or indulging, food was the way that I was coping with my feelings. And I was never taking care of myself. It was not about taking care of myself. It was always about coping with feelings, coping with life, or controlling my body in some way. And I was always using the scale to tell me whether I was good or bad. So if I got on the scale and it was up, then I was bad. And if I got on the scale and it was down, then I was good. And I was always comparing myself to other people without any regard to how different my life was from them or what was going on in my life versus theirs. And so I really thought that I was the only person that went through this until I started coaching moms. So as I mentioned, I have this fit pregnancy blog. It took off. It became viral. And I say unfortunately sometimes because I am sort of embarrassed at some of the things that I wrote originally on there because it was coming from that orthorexic state of mind. Luckily, I've gone back at this point and modified a lot of things, but I was writing. So I was getting coaching clients and trying to coach them through their postpartum time and their time of breastfeeding. And I became an expert on breastfeeding fat loss. And so I was writing them these meal plans and giving them macros, and I was noticing that my clients either couldn't follow these plans at all, or they would be miserable and preoccupied the whole entire time with how fast their body was changing, or if it was changing at all. Or they would be obsessed with what was going on the scale. Or they would be obsessed with the exact calorie count, and they would ignore their body signals in order to meet the calories that I had told them to follow. And this was not okay with me. I saw that what I had gone through, they were also going through with food, and they also had this really negative relationship with their bodies, and with food. And they were white knuckling through it, or they weren't able to stick with it. And I didn't want to be a part of that diet culture. And I was realizing that at the time. The emails that were coming in for applications for coaching that I was receiving daily were breaking my heart. Women really, one of the questions on the application, still to this, I turned off my cellular and I still got a phone call. I didn't want to be a part of I don't remember what I was saying because now I'm thrown off. So women, the applications that were coming in, there's a line on there for body image. What do you think about your body? How do you feel about your body? And there was never anyone who was like, I just had a baby and so it's fine. Nobody ever said that. Women hated their bodies after having babies. And they were treating themselves like crap during a time that is already stressful and overwhelming, like having a new baby, having one new baby, on top of many of us are having our second or third baby. And many of us also have careers. So we have all these things going on. And they were giving themselves no slack at all. And it was just a very big awakening for me. I did not want to contribute to this diet culture anymore, especially the one that's aimed at moms. And I wanted to do something about it. So I started writing lessons and giving them tools and strategies that had the same ways that I had kind of learned to heal my own relationship with food through intuitive eating and through healing my relationship with my body. I started to write them these lessons as well and tried to teach them the way that I had learned. And I developed intentional eating and the ideal body formula, which is two of the things that I use to this day with my clients. And I stopped writing meal plans and macros and started teaching them how to treat the actual problem that leads to dieting and misery, and that's self-loathing. How to and all the underlying things that are causing us to obsess over food. And so I was realizing that it was the diets and meal plans were treating the symptoms and not ever addressing the cause. And I wanted to get down to the root of what was I wanted to actually help people. I didn't want to just, help them force off some weight. I wanted to actually help them inside as well. So I finally, I taught them how to heal their relationship with food, how to create a healthy lifestyle that sets them up for consistency and success, but it's totally customized to their life, their preferences, their schedule, and their psychology. So that's a big deal for me, is that I've learned that like diet plans and meal plans are one size fit all for everyone, right? They're cookie cutters, and we're all living different lives. We have different psychologies, different psychology, different preferences, DNA, all these things that are different. It's no wonder that only 2% of diets and meal programs and workout programs will actually stick for people. It's because 2% of people can do those things. So I wanted to teach them how to do that, how to create that for themselves instead of like handing them something, putting a Band-Aid on the problem, and not doing anything about the underlying situation. So something amazing happened when I did that. I made this shift about 2 years ago, and I stopped writing those meal plans and started really addressing those internal problems and their mindset. And not only did their adherence levels to the healthy habits that they had been trying to white knuckle before, their adherence levels skyrocketed. So they were able to finally finally do the things that they had been trying to force themselves to do, but it was like feeling more effortless and feeling like a natural side effect of something instead of something they had to force themselves to do. But they were reporting happiness levels off the charts, no matter what was going on with their bodies. So something very similar that had happened to me during my pregnancy when I finally decided to trust my body. I felt so happy after that, and they were experiencing the same happiness levels. And it was really amazing, and it was really gratifying for me, and I was hooked. This had to be my new passion. This had to be my new career. And I wanted to take my practice away from handing out Band-Aids and get to the heart of what was going on with food and body obsession, which is it all starts inside. It all starts with us hating ourselves, and it all starts with using food as this coping mechanism to hating ourselves. So, this was also when I was coaching these clients and going through this process with them, it was affecting their entire lives. It wasn't just helping them with their healthy habits. They were able to adhere to exercise more. They were able to eat in a healthier way. And it was sticking for them more than it was before. But not only that, but it was starting to affect their lives. They had improved relationships with their spouses. I was hearing about people whose entire relationships that had been in trouble were improving because they weren't thinking about food all the time. They suddenly had all this space in their head for their spouse, and their spouse felt that. Same thing with their relationships with their kids. They had more brain space in to be able to devote to their kids and be present. So that exact same thing that I experienced with my kids, they were able to experience that too. But finance, quality of life, all the thing that there's something that's so broken inside of so many of us, especially as women, that when we heal it, it has all these symptoms, and food and body is just one of those symptoms. But when you heal this one thing, you also start to heal all these other things that it was affecting too. Your relationships, your finances, there was so many things that changed for me. It wasn't just my relationship with food. So my coaching developed into something totally different. And it's kind of like turned into almost a life coaching program, taught through fitness with the background of fitness and nutrition habits. So I've now coached hundreds and hundreds of women privately, as well as thousands online. Hosted my first ever live retreat about a month ago and went through these things with them, and it was amazing. As I've said, I've had over 4 million visitors to my website at this point. And I've tried to take that website into this new direction. So that is my story and how I ended up doing what I do, and also why I care so much about food and body obsession. As you can see, it's not just about food, and it's not just about your body. It's about something inside of us that this is a symptom of something that's much deeper. And so it requires some work. And so the people who work with me know now that we're going to get a little uncomfortable, and we're going to have to take a deep introspective look. But the outcome is this like insane levels of happiness and mental space and freedom. So, I would never go back to the way that I was before. I would never go back to food and body obsession. And I know that my clients have said the exact same thing. So I want to know, for your homework, what I want you to do is to think about your story with food in your body. So we're going to be journaling this week for homework, and we're going to be just kind of thinking about these things for yourself so that you can develop an awareness, because without awareness, you can't change anything. And without that awareness, you can't recognize your patterns and break them. So I want you to write your own story. What is your story with food in your body? What diets have you gone on? When did this start for you? When did food and body obsession start for you? Do you relate to my story? To the story of, a lot of people relate to me when I was always yo-yo dieting and using food as a coping mechanism. A lot of people relate more to the being restrictive all the time. And some people bounce back and forth between both the way that I did. So which one do you relate to the most? And is your relationship with food intense? Do you have an intense relationship with food? Are you somebody who thinks about food all the time? And if so, where is that showing up in your life? And I really want to know, do you have compassion for yourself? Are you able to have compassion for yourself in these situations, or are you constantly beating yourself up and berating yourself? If you feel comfortable, you can share this on Instagram and tag me so that I can read it and read your homework. I would love to hear about your story. You can, if you are getting this in an email and rewatching the replay, which it seems like most people will be doing, then you can just hit reply to the email and share that story with me. But I would love to hear your story of your story with food and body obsession. What brought you to this workshop? What made you decide that you needed to work on this? And I also want to encourage you. This is a lot of the women, I've done this workshop before. A lot of the women that I have worked with and who have ended up on the other side of this started with this workshop. And they started with just having an awareness, and so many light bulbs went off for them that it was the start of like a domino effect of things just falling into place for them. But I will tell you that this is not going to be one of those things where you just change something, you change one little thing, and then all of a sudden your life is fixed. This is going to require some work. It's going to require you showing up for yourself. But I can promise you, I am on the other side of this. I tell my clients this a lot. In the mentorship we started 5 months ago. And at the beginning I was like, you guys are on the other side of this big ravine right now. I am telling you exactly the steps to get here to the other side where I am now, where I feel free with food. I have my fittest, healthiest body, but I don't ever think about food in my body anymore. This is just a side effect. And you can get here too, but it's going to require some action. It's going to require some self-compassion, some awareness, and it's going to require you to really commit to yourself. And that is one of the things that people aren't willing to do. And it started for me when I was just like, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I really can't live like this anymore. I get one life. I get one chance at being a mother to these little kids. And I want to enjoy it. And I didn't want to look back and realize that I wasted so much time of my life. You know, my grandmother is almost 90 years old and still tells me about her Weight Watchers points that she's following. Like, I couldn't see that for myself. And I think that if you're here, that you don't want to feel that way either. So this is going to require some commitment. It is. And I'm not going to BS you about that. It's going to require some introspection, and it's going to require a little bit of work, but I promise you, and I'm going to introduce you to some ladies on Friday that have done this work with me, and that will tell you, and they are going to tell you, do this for yourself, because what's on the other side is amazing. And what's on the other side is the secret to life, and the secret to enjoying life, and the secret to enjoying motherhood, and to stop thinking about food in your body so much. So if you guys can just hang in there with me for this week, and you can commit to yourself. There's going to be days when you don't want to watch the video. You don't want to do the homework. Sometimes it's really hard to make yourself do these things and to think about these things. But what you want is waiting on the other side of this work. I promise you, from the other side, it is possible for you. And if it's possible for me, it's possible for anyone. And that's really what I'm here to tell you guys. So tomorrow we're going to talk about why we're obsessed. Exactly. I touched on a few of the things today in my own story, but tomorrow we're going to talk about why we're obsessed, and what exactly it is about our society that makes us think about our bodies so much, and what makes us in turn think about food so much. And the reason we need to talk about this is because we need to recognize it so we can separate from it. If you develop an awareness to what exactly is causing you all of this obsession, then when you see it, you can separate from it and not let it overtake you. And that's one of the biggest secrets to doing this work. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. So tomorrow, show up here. I think I said same time tomorrow, 12 o'clock. Same time tomorrow. I'll put that in the email for sure. 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. And that is what I will be discussing. And we can talk about all that. We're going to have homework every day. So get ready. Day 3, body image and food obsession. Day 4, we're going to talk about the most common traps that we fall into. And on day 5, like I said, I'm going to be introducing you to some amazing women who have gotten to the other side of food and body obsession and are living a life of freedom now. So if you have questions or comments, you can leave those below here if you're watching the live stream, or if you're watching the playback on IGTV. Then I am happy to answer questions from you guys about my story or anything else that you have questions about. So do your homework. Let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear from you guys, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.